Good morning, Dr. Houston, or good evening, depending on when you're watching this. This is my presentation for the assignment of choice. I chose Behavioralism versus Nativism. Of course, my name is Sierra Dare, and this is for Language Development 306. So first we're going to talk about behavioralism. Behavioralism is a theory of learning in which states all behaviors are learned through interaction with the environment through a process called conditioning. This is all based on the nurture element of nature versus nurture, meaning that the environment is what plays a large and major part of development of language acquisition. So basically, we don't just have language, we observe it from our caregivers and then we do it. And basically, the whole basis of this is that language is a learned behavior through imitation and selective reinforcement. Next, we're going to talk about Ivan Pavlov. He is one of the main people that interact with behavioralism. He was born in 1849 and he died in 1936. He's a well-known psychologist and physiologist. He actually invented the bell and dog theory, which basically states that he took these dogs, he gave them food, and every time he fed them food, he rang a bell. And then eventually the dogs learned to salivate over the bell and over the food. This is also known as involuntary behaviors. Salivation is what would be considered the involuntary behavior in this. You may be asking yourself, why is this related to language? Well, this is the first time we're presented with a word, and it is meaningless until it is paired with an object or an action. So this is like saying that a pen, we don't know it's a pen unless someone tells us it's a pen. Words give meaning to object. Another well-known behavioralist is B.F. Skinner. He was alive in 1904, sorry, a little dyslexia, and he died in 1990. He has many titles: psychologist, author, inventor, and social philosopher. He is more focused on operant conditioning, which means the voluntary behaviors. He also is known for reinforcement and punishment, which I'm going to show you in the next slide more about that. So, as I was saying, positive and negative reinforcement and punishment. Reinforcement is to increase a behavior, punishment is to decrease a behavior. So positive reinforcement is to add something to encourage behavior, but negative reinforcement is to remove to encourage a behavior. So if we're talking about this, it's like if a child does well on their English test, they get to go out to dinner. Removing a behavior, removing something to increase a behavior would be like having to do one less chore if you do well on this exam. And then this same goes for the punishment side of things, and punishment is to decrease behavior. So we have negative punishment, which is something to remove to discourage a behavior, and then positive punishment, which is something added to discourage a behavior. So negative punishment, a good example of that would be removing a child's cell phone or their ability to read or to go outside. Those are pretty common punishments for children. And then something added to discourage a behavior is like having to write an apology note when you do something wrong. It's an added chore to the list of things that are needed to get done. Okay, so next we're gonna talk about nativism. This is the theory that human beings are born with this innate knowledge of language that enables them to structure and interpret the data they encounter as language learners. This is the nature side of the argument of nature versus nurture. Basically, they're saying there's little to no influence, environmental influence is needed to develop language. Caregivers do not explicitly teach language skills to their children. So quote unquote, obviously, the child hears a language spoken in their region and automatically masters syntax. That is the idea. Later we're going to go into the LAD, which is language acquisition device, and it's basically this part in the brain that has access to universal grammar in knowing the syntax of things. One of the main nativists is Noam Chomsky, which looking at him, he is the only man in the world that could ever be named Noam, and it makes sense. Anyway, he is still alive, but he was born in 1928. He's an American linguist, and he is the creator of the LAD. Now, the LAD is a widely controversial topic, given there's lots of research in neuroanatomy, and we've yet to find this universal language device, but that's neither here nor there. And as you can see here, this is my Venn diagram that I made for comparing and contrasting both theories. So we're going to start with behavioralism, which is obviously it's different, it's nurture, it's observation only. Classical and operant conditioning, reward and punishment. On the other side, we have nativism, which is the nature. It's the language acquisition device, and that language will happen regardless of the environment because we are programmed for it. Reasons they do collide in some areas. Neither one, I would say, is completely right, but I think there is some knowledge that we can pull from either side to come up with the actual truth of language development. And this is that environment plays a role. Behavioralism is based on nature, or the environment in which a child grows up in. And nativism focuses on the nature aspect, but also if they are talking about the LAD device, they could be speaking on a child's region and being able to master the syntax, and that would also be talking about a child's environment to develop the syntax in their brain. And children do acquire language innately and through observation. And there are parts in the brain, such as the temporal lobe has so much with auditory processing and language processing. I mean, it has Broca and Wernicke's area. I believe that's Brodmann 41 and 42. I could be wrong. It also has like the spherotemporal gyrus. It also houses places for dyslexia and apraxia of speech. We also can look at the auditory part of the brain, because if a child can't hear correctly, they're not going to speak correctly. But we can also see that nurture does play a significant role in observation, because as we talked about in class, the Jeannie case, Jeannie was a girl that was locked in the attic for, I believe, 12 to 14 years, and she basically had the brain of an 18-month-old. And it's very tragic, and it's very hard to see that she never developed, even with speech pathology, she didn't develop a lot of the 5 whys, the who, what, when, where, why. She didn't develop. She has some language ability, but when they found her, there was swallowing problems, there was comprehension, and just so much that we learned from observation from our parents. And when we're deprived of that nurture, we can see that there are significant deficits in this. And I feel like this is a very well